Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Radio, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
What is going on?
Oh, not too much. Hey, Shane, what's happening with our stream here?
You have to log in.
You sent it yesterday. I'm logged into that one. It's not working.
Interesting.
Can you send it again, please?
Yeah.
We're here, Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. How are you?
It's funny when you're reading, you are so slow.
Well, no one ever said I was smart.
Well, let's go.
I'm working on it.
All right, let's major in the majors.
I'm trying.
Or
I
feel
think
some type of way.
getting the video stream on is pretty major.
We'll be all right. Got a show to do.
I'm trying. How was your weekend?
The weekend was okay. It was, obviously, Saturday was lousy. Yesterday I had to go back to work, so I figured I better pace myself for this week.
Okay.
This is going to be a long week, so we got to figure out lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of questions and try to provide a few answers, on a personal level. We're getting ready for an opponent we just saw in the playoffs, so that cat and mouse game will be very, very fun.
What was that, 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks? Yeah, that's tough. That's a tough turnaround.
Yeah, they were our last game of the regular season.
Oh, that's right.
So, the way we looked at it Saturday morning and yesterday it's a challenge. I had to do something different. See what we did well, see what we didn't well. They had some early success.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun.
Does it cross into your mind at all that Papio kind of just did this with Central with a team that they already played?
100%.
Got beat up by a little bit.
Yep. Then you watch the game.
And then they came around and beat them.
Yeah. It's a very resilient football team. Wasn't always pretty.
It's a good group, though.
Yeah, I've been saying that.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all. They were probably 80-20 running the ball, too.
Yeah.
That one got away from Central late, though. Ooh-wee.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I think you watched a little pot shots on social media, and it's like, I don't understand what you gain by that, but I'm, you're different.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an opportunity as opposed to being on behind a keyboard or typing. You can call.
We would love to have a conversation.
Yeah, and you can still be anonymous too. You can give me a fake name, and because there's plenty of responsibility to go around, right? So, coaches got to figure out, what they need to do different, right? Why the emotional ups and downs?
I think that's the thing I'm most confused by.
If you were gonna start with one,
yeah, because I know people are gonna start with the offense, and there's plenty of questions there. That's fine. I've got questions about not just a particular person on offense. I think it's kind of universal. But I think the thing that bothers me the most is you go from Indiana to Ohio State to UCLA on Saturday, and just
wait. Do we think Ohio State's good again?
I think Nebraska played much differently against Ohio State than they did in the 2 weeks that bookended them.
Okay.
In terms of just their emotional endurance, their competitiveness, even their focus a little bit. I don't ever think it's an effort thing in terms of laziness. I don't ever think it's that. Sometimes I think when we say effort, we need to think of competitiveness or endurance, like you say sometimes.
Like competitive endurance?
Yes.
Okay.
Where you have to stay locked in and you have to stay focused for an extended period of time. That takes an effort too. It's not that you're purposefully being lazy. It's that you maybe haven't trained yourself up to be emotionally or competitively have that kind of stamina, right? And I think that's an effort thing too, not just, I don't feel like going hard right now.
Yeah, I think so. On the heels of that, before you get going, so I think the glaring thing is this, it's twice now coming off a bye where you feel like, not Nebraska coming off a bye, but UCLA coming off a bye, and Indiana and Nebraska both coming off a bye, where you feel like
the other team had a way better game plan.
Yeah. But then in between, when Ohio State was coming off the bye, you didn't get that sense. Now, there's lots of reasons for that, potentially. And I don't know which is which, right?
Especially for Ohio State.
Hypothetically, for Indiana, you may be thinking, this is just who Indiana is, right? Well coached, same guys in the same program, like they know how to do what they're doing, so that doesn't change. Ohio State may have been thinking, yeah, we're coming off a loss. Okay, what do we want to fix us? Did they convince themselves that they're an ill-timed slide or a gimmick 12-man play thing away from being undefeated, so they didn't quite dial in? Were they dialed in? Were they mad? I don't know.
Got Penn State coming up.
Yeah. So, I mean, whatever. And then UCLA, where you felt pretty good going into the bye week about yourself. You have some pretty creative minds. And then they got after it. So because they got off to a good start. I mean, you have to ask yourself, you're sitting in that staff meeting Sunday morning, and you have to ask yourself, how out of the first 24 plays did UCLA run 21 of them?
Yeah. That's
like how in the first 24 plays of the game, how did UCLA run 21 of them? So that, like, you kind of have to start there. Then you can get into like chasing from then on out, because that's really what it was.
Yeah.
You go back and you because I try not to just fly off the hand. It'd be easy for me to be emotional, but I'm not. So I want to see what actually was going on. And it's like, I go back and I went back to Indiana, because UCLA said, their staff said, Indiana was the best team they played. Go back and look at their schedule.
Yeah.
UCLA's.
Yeah.
They said Indiana was the best.
They had a really tough schedule.
But of all those good teams.
But LSU.
They felt like Indiana was the best team they played. So I've kind of come to grips with Indiana to some degree.
Sure.
Okay. To some degree. Not the controllables as a player, right? Because I felt like, man, I don't know, man. Mental prep was just okay.
But you look at them as a team where, hey, they're good enough that if you're not locked in, they're going to embarrass you.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
So I go to UCLA and I'm thinking, fudge, like these guys are winning. They're winning their man concepts.
Yeah. They're one-on-ones.
They hadn't been doing that.
Yeah.
So is that them? Is that a Nebraska thing? And it was a little bit of both, right? If I'm supposed to leverage and be on top shoulder, like, then get on the top shoulder. That's not a UCLA thing.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna give up that 7 cut to Gilmore, and he straightens me up inside, I have to know. I have no help outside.
Yeah.
I do have help inside. I gotta probably
force him to help.
I gotta be better leverage wise.
Yeah.
So I can see that, but then I go back and I look at like a 3rd and 7 to a tight end, where Garber's he throws a 98-mile-an-hour heater. It's top shoulder in between 3 defenders, a little bit behind. Tight end plucks it out of the air, first down, momentum killer. I can look at a toss. During the broadcast, Nebraska has to be cognizant of getting out leveraged on the perimeter. It's happened they did the fly sweep once, they did the toss 3 times. I would venture to guess, and I didn't chart it, but between the 3 toss plays where UCLA got in like what I'd call truck or trio, you got 3 buys, they run just behind student buy, and they just speed race you to the corner. Like they did that concept, I think 4 or 5 times. I bet you they average well into the double digits, probably 15 yards a carry. But on 2 of those, you have missed tackles at the point of attack.
Yeah.
So I think to myself, okay, is this a scheme?
So it's a good concept. That works, obviously.
It's a great concept.
But Nebraska still had an opportunity to make plays.
Yeah. So I have to buoy that, because conversely, I flip it around and it's like 3rd down, here's a tough pass to receiver blank, and we don't make the catch, or it's second and whatever, or third and whatever, and this guy's fairly open. We kind of hold the ball. We don't really get rid of the ball, and then like we're mad at the offensive line when we come back. So wherever you land on the whole, well, it's this person's fault, or the OC is this, or the special teams guy is that, players have to kind of be thinking the same thing too. Right? Because the whole word for today and this week, especially in a bye week, is accountability. From the head coach to the OC, because this is how it works. Head coaches coach coordinators.
Yep.
Coordinators coach position coaches. Position coaches coach players. Anything you get outside of that hierarchy is gravy. But from a necessity standpoint, it has to be like that in a healthy organization. So wherever,
real quick, when you say anything outside of that, you mean like older guys coaching younger guys?
Yeah, or your head coach coaching
something extra. Okay, gotcha.
Position guys.
Okay.
Yeah, anything other than that's gravy. So it's a really fine line, because I can't separate. I can separate why it took 21 plays inside the red zone.
Yeah.
Like I have an idea why, but I can back it up and say, if I'm a player, I can say, well, if I make this play, we don't even get to the next play.
Yeah.
I can say, if I make this block, we don't even get to the next play. So that's why accountability is important, because you can let, it's not even a right term. You cannot get to the Satterfield discussion if you're better individually.
Sure.
But in the same vein, as an OC, if I'm not accomplishing this with my players, then what's next for me? Like, I have to be able to say, why when we get inside the 20 do we struggle? Whatever that answer is, start there.
Yeah, because that's not new. That's been all year.
So the whole chicken or the egg thing, you don't have to arrive at it. Fans can, because that's what's going to happen, and that's okay, right? I don't expect them to. I don't expect like these rational, like well thought out. I mean, I want fans. Fans can do just fan. It's fine, right? Because the same as I want them to be able to control themselves, I'm going to challenge myself to control myself, regardless of what's intimated or said or whatever. The players got to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Coaches have to do the exact same thing. The adults in the room have to be the adults. And so sometimes that means you're going to hear things and people are going to say some things to you that you don't want to hear. And sometimes it's in your very own house.
Yeah.
Right? So,
I mean, you've got kids, you know that.
Yeah. Statistically, you look at like what the struggles are inside the red zone. What don't we do? What haven't we done well versus what we do from the 25, or in some cases, depending on how we field kicks, like the 18 or the 19 to the 25.
Yeah.
Okay. Like,
haven't run the ball well inside the red zone.
What's different there? What goes away? Is it condensed? Is it not condensed? Am I calling similar type plays? Like, you have to really self-scout that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you get an answer. And then it's like, well, is it an execution thing? Then if it's an execution thing, a lot of times that's coaching. If it's your core plays or your core pet plays and you're not executing, you can say that that's players. And sometimes it is in individual one-on-ones if you know better. But sometimes you can't play those guys either.
I'll say, at what point does it come personnel decisions?
Well, that's what they've got to ask themselves.
Yeah.
Because there's so many things I think. I'm almost to the point, and this is the tricky part for Coach Rule. And I've said this before, and coaches know what I'm talking about. You get to a point where you say, I haven't won with you, so I certainly can lose without you.
Yeah, 100%.
You have 3 more opportunities to get to the desired outcome, which was to go bowling.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't even care what it looks like.
Yeah, you don't care what number it is. You don't care how it happens.
You
just get to a bowl.
So that's the tricky part for them.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't won with you. I certainly can lose without you.
So do I go young guys? Do I go guys
whomever,
yeah, whatever it is?
Right. Like that's the
young
part
guys or guys that haven't been playing this year.
Because the changes at the end of the year are going to be what the changes are,
mm-hmm.
whatever they are.
But that doesn't help us in the next 3 games.
Yeah, you got to figure out how to tighten it up in the next 3 games. And I'm telling you, it starts with everybody.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, head coaches coach coordinators,
mm-hmm.
coordinators coach position coaches coach players. Anything in the meantime is gravy.
I think one of the things that, because obviously I see all the discussions on social media and stuff, and you're right, like fans can fan and do whatever they want. Here's the only place that I get a little bit frustrated.
Yeah.
Is number one is you can be as mad as you want, that's fine. Don't get mad at me for not being as mad as you. Like, that's the part where there's a disconnect for me, just mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just me. I mean, it seems like they feel that way about, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, 888-638-4876. It feels like they feel that way about the coaches, too. It feels like they think Coach Rule should be as mad as they are in the moment. And what I'm concerned about isn't, hey, what happens in the offseason, what happens, after the season's over. What I'm concerned about is how in the next 3 games do they get to a bowl,
mm-hmm.
right? And if I genuinely believed that getting rid of an offensive coordinator or taking away play calling or whatever would help get to that goal, I'm all for it, right? If I thought Coach Rule believed that, I'd be all for it. I don't think that's the case. I think we can have a discussion, like you said, after the season about, hey, are these guys the best fits here? Does this make sense moving forward? I'm totally open to that discussion.
Yeah.
The discussion that I don't think is useful, and that's just me personally, is I don't think making that change with 3 games left gets you any closer to your goal.
No.
And that's the thing that I keep coming back to. It's not that I think the offense is looked great. It's not that I think that even the defense, I mean, you talk about 21 out of 24 plays, that's as much on the defense as it is the offense, right?
And I forgot to start. Sharpie said it a couple times, and I think I almost forgot. Did they get 6 of the first 7 or 7 of the first 8?
I believe it was 6 of the first 7 because they ended up 6 of 8 at one point. I think they missed their 8th one.
Okay.
On third down conversions, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I believe it was 6 of the first 7.
So it's like, and you have to learn to. It's like when people say something to you that you may not like originally. It's like, okay, is there any truth to what they said?
Sure.
Right? Can I eat that part of it and spit out the rest? Because I think you have to be able to figure out, even as a coaching staff, listening to narratives and critiques, what part in there is true?
100%. Yeah.
That I feel like I can do something with and settle on, and what part isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to be able to eat the meat and spit out the bones.
Let's get to our guy Les here on the Hurrdat Hotline. Les, what's going on, man? Les, what's up?
Yeah.
Les,
hey,
how are you, buddy?
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Hey. Dislocated jaw, but other than that, awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, listen to you, DB. That first segment before I called, that was awesome. You kind of answered a lot of my questions, but just calling in as a lifelong fan, took me to my first game back in the late '60s, homecoming game. Got beat by K-State. Been a fan ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be, a loss used to just kill me, put me into a deep depression for a couple 3 days. And now, I don't know. I don't like the feeling I'm getting now, because now it's kind of like the give a damn is gone. Come next time we play, I'll be all 100%. But it's like the losses aren't bothering me as much as I think they should.
Les,
that makes sense.
Are you sure, Les? Are you sure?
You know what, Damon? I think maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe they are bothering me. I'm just trying to cover it up.
It sounds like a coping mechanism, if I'm being honest. It seems like you're just trying to cope with it, which I get.
So how much of it, Les, because you're super smart, you don't get to be that successful being a ding-dong. How much of it is you're protecting yourself for the duration until you see a solution.
You actually just that's thanks for the therapy session. You actually just
yeah, I don't know about that. You should see my own inside thoughts.
I'm coping with it. So, but just differently, just because like clearly affect the way I would maybe.
Because once you saw some potential changes, or like you'd be less again, right? Not LESS, LES.
Yeah, I mean, like you probably felt way different after Ohio State, even though that didn't go the way you wanted to.
Because right now you've got to convince yourself, man, I got to ramp this thing back up at Southern Cal, and I may see the same thing.
Right, and I'm kind of like you with the last thing. It's time to start putting. Okay, we got 3 games to win 1.
Yep.
All right, and all 3 are winnable, and all 3 are losable. In my opinion, I'm not a football guy. I'm a football fan, but I'm kind of like you, DB. Okay, like I say, I'm not a football guy, but doggone it, I guarantee you there's some young bucks on that team that can return a punt.
Yeah.
There's some young bucks on that team that can.
Les, it's hard. I have to literally practice what I preach, right? And I appreciate.
I know you do.
And I appreciate the call, Les.
Yeah.
It's hard.
We can get into that conversation because I think Les is right. I think there's some young guys that can help you.
He's 100% right, and I love what the mayor said, because this is where I'm at, and I'm going to get into this, whether it's NIL or money you've committed to coaches or whatever. If you're not going to get the return on investment, you have to cut the ties and you have to move on. My man Joel says caring, not coddling. I love the mantra, but I think there's some coddling going on. We'll talk about that.
That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio and 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Before we get into anything else, you want to get to Lance first?
Pardon?
You want to get to Lance first?
Did I scare you with my delivery?
No, you just pointed, so I didn't know if you were going to say something or if you want to get to Lance.
Yeah. Wait, let's get to Lance.
Lance and Lincoln, what's going on, man?
Hey, guys. I have a couple of questions.
L.
Generally,
Beezy. Off the heezy.
What's up, buddy? How are you guys?
Well, you know how I am.
Yeah, it's rough out here, man.
You know how I am. But, I mean, I just tell myself, I think it could be worse. Here, let me ask you something before I give you the runway.
Okay.
Remember, you've known me forever, right? Since you were a kid. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I've been consistent about with what's gone on in Lincoln over the last 20 years, if I was building the ideal staff and head coach, do you realize one of the things that I would do is if I was the head coach, I would either be super heavy-handed, where I would make sure that I would not allow you to be spoiled, or I would only hire guys that I felt like were built to be able to handle the luxuries and the level of comfortability that comes with being here. Because for so long, and this isn't unique to just this staff, I feel like it is so easy to get the Disneyland feel without really paying for a ticket. It's very, very hard as an individual to be that disciplined and diligent with attacking every single day. Because as you know, I told you this job here under these conditions takes a grinder, a kind of closer to mean-spirited grinder, or it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I think you need a head coach that and a staff that I think can be really, really push the guys. And I thought we were gonna have that. I don't know if
you got a lot of parts. You got a lot of parts of it. You got a lot of you got a lot of parts of it.
Yes. I think it's really hard to me, and we've had some chats about this, and then I have some questions about coordinators, but to me, it's really hard to get up every day, and now you're getting NIL money, and you're showing up to this big building, and there's 80,000 fans in the stands, and
you did intimate the big building thing last week, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be really, really hard, not just on the coaches, but I think on the players, right? Because, most of the time in life, you're like, yeah, I got this, I earned this. But then at the end of the day on Saturdays, results aren't happening, right? So I think when I think back about when you were there, it was a meat grinder. And you had nice facilities, but you guys were lifting weights underneath the stadium seats. I mean, the Old North, the field house wasn't air conditioned, and you didn't have video boards and pods where there's zero gravity and walk-through rooms with, 50-foot screens where you can simulate things. But you guys had the results on the field. So we've seen sort of the flip side and the in-between, and I think we've seen enough to maybe know what we probably wouldn't do when hiring staff and see our blind spots. But my question about coordinators is I'm generally on agreement that you don't fire a guy with 3 games left. But then I think about what we had when Frost left and we moved Bill Bush over. If I know I need to win 1 game, and I don't think we've gotten better since probably that Colorado game, or maybe you could say some of the Purdue game. Can you use that as a way to sort of motivate your guys to go and win a game? Like, I mean, this is kind of maniac level stuff, but like thinking of the 3 games of which one gives you the best chance to win. If you were to say go to Glenn Thomas, who I know is co-OC, but give him play calling duties, is there a spot in the season where that would motivate a team, even just for 1 game? Because I don't think you can, if things start to get really hairy, if you're going into year 3 with 2 or 3 new coordinators and, not making a bowl game yet, even though I think you have some pieces in the pipeline that'll turn some dividends over, you worry about running into no man's land with your roster of like having a year or 2 of futility where it's almost impossible to get your head back above water.
I appreciate the call.
So does it depend on how the team feels about that particular guy?
Yeah. So there's a lot in there. Number one, hear my heart. I think I don't have any questions. None. That Coach Rule is the right head coach.
Mm-hmm.
None. I think he's tough enough. I think he's resilient enough. And I think he's smart enough to do what he needs to do to put something in in position to be successful. Now, one area I would love to just sit down and like just shoot the breeze with him is he's so he hates the transactional aspect of sports, right? He's a relationship builder.
And that might be a little bit of PTSD.
So I want to know, 100%. That's what I was going to say. Right. So I wonder the impact of Carolina going forward.
Sure.
Because he's seen such the ugly that has it like
overcorrected.
Like, where is he in terms of,
Sorry. I'm trying to.
Yeah. Shut your ass up for a second. I'm totally joking. In terms of overcorrecting. Right. So it's like, where are you with that? Because he's human too.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to back it up real quick before I let you get into what Lance said is when Joel said the caring, not coddling, and Lance talked, because he intimated this last week, and I really didn't give it any attention because I'm like, fudge, man, as hard as he is on some of his staff about like when they've gotten pay increases and stuff, I certainly don't worry about other staff and players.
Sure.
But you need help from your coaches too.
Yeah. They have to hold up their end of the bargain.
They have to hold up their end of the bargain.
Yeah.
So now I'm back to Maybe he's on to something. Because what did I tell you he said? And I'm not afraid to say it because it wasn't anything he hasn't, I don't think, said out loud. He said, one of the toughest parts of this job will be making sure that my guys understand that this isn't Disney World.
Yeah. Yeah, he said that out loud for sure.
So now I go back to what Joel said, caring, not coddling.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to shake things up.
Yeah.
Now the tricky part is how much is panicking versus these guys give us the best chance to win.
Yeah.
Because staff-wise, I don't know what you're going to do in these last 3 weeks.
Well, that's where it gets tricky.
It is tricky.
Yeah.
Because you have to have other people that can do the job.
So you have to have somebody better in-house.
And
right?
You have to be able to tell these guys, hey, listen, I don't like the way that this guy and this guy, because there's only a handful of former, like, and I'm not going to pit former guys against each other because everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys are connected. Some guys care. Some guys don't care. Everybody's like different in terms of kind of their philosophy. But there's a handful of former guys that I talk to, and I think that I actually trust because I think they're close enough to it. They care enough,
mm-hmm.
and they want what's best, and as opposed to comparisons. And the real tricky part going forward is, at what cost do you make a statement internally and still give yourself chances to win? And I think that's where you have to get into the, well, I haven't won with you bit.
That's a good question. We'll get into that and more as we wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. I want to get back into what Lance was talking about there at the end of his call, because he brought up a question about, hey, like, can this send a message to your team?
Which part?
With the OC.
Oh, no, did he say OC by name or just coaches in particular?
I think he said coaches. He said coaches.
No, he said coordinators. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. He said coordinators.
So I'm going to assume he means OC.
Yeah.
Because despite some concerns, I think most people are so cool with Tony White. What? What?
Nothing. T. White is fine.
No, I get that.
Let's not go crazy.
I'm not. I'm just saying,
Hey,
the defense had lapses too, right?
If you don't stop acting all sensitive,
The defense had lapses too, right?
Relax. I'm talking out loud. You're getting me in a moment in which you better buck up, Buttercup.
Here.
I'll never be disrespectful like that. You're good. I'm thinking out loud.
All right.
T. White is fine. The interesting thing that we have to be careful of is we can't gravitate towards the lowest common denominator, right? I've seen enough of that sometimes as a cultural group. Don't do that with the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
Don't gravitate towards the lowest common denominator. So we can't be moved by the whole, like the empty can rattling the loudest thing, right? So you have to be careful about giving things credence that don't really have much merit. I don't think anyone in the country wouldn't hire Tony. Everyone in the country would hire Tony White on the open market.
100%.
Everyone. So it's not anything that really even needs to be broached unless we're giving in to the lowest common denominator. There's lots of other things that happen defensively where you look at what happened situationally. Now, this is the total coaching, right? If I'm working with guys, we just had this conversation yesterday. Do we want to play? So we did this in the second half against Papillion. They had a hard time stopping it. Do we change? Do we stay? So you get into these deals, right? Having these, well, they got tape too. Then you go back and forth. Okay, well, if we play coverage, then how does it fit this? Then at some point, somebody has to say, wait a minute. What's the desired outcome? It is this. The thing that I think the defense is going through right now, and I'll get to the offense in the same vein if we're going to get into this. I was going to let you address Lance, but the Tony White thing is interesting because I said this for a couple of weeks now, and I believe this to be true. I think when you have new assistants, especially in an integral role like in the secondary, and you had to start on the fly, there's a couple things at play here. Number one, philosophies have to mesh. Number two, the teaching styles within said philosophy have to mesh. For Nebraska, what happens is the staffs that I think they're going to have the most difficult time with offensively, like when they go up against an offensive mind, are staffs that are very creative within their schematics, because Nebraska, in my opinion, hasn't had enough time to go through the variables within their infrastructure, because Butler hasn't been there long enough.
Sure.
So you either want to all be new
or none of you.
Or none of you.
Yeah.
Right? It's hard to make variations when you have one guy that knows the most and everybody else is just trying to rally.
Do you think there's a disconnect there?
That's why I think UCLA in a bye week, even though I like some of Nebraska, I like the coaching aptitude.
They're able to scheme them up a little bit.
Yeah.
You think?
I absolutely, but nobody wants to have that conversation because they just want to dumb it down to, man, we got out coached. But there's reasons.
Yeah, it's like, oh, good coach, bad coach.
Yeah, but what happened was over time, at halftime, like they had time to see, react, and be better. So I don't.
After the first two drives, honestly, after
what
two drives,
I'm saying though? Yeah. Like I can say that without, like I'm just giving you the I'm giving you what I think is the why we saw what we saw.
What did we see? What did we say? They were 6 for their first 7.
Yeah.
Guess what they finished on third down? 6 for 13.
And if you don't fudge, man, if you just understand in a 2-by to the field, a 2-by to the field with back to you, I don't care if Gilmore goes inside. Don't take the cheese.
Yeah. It's bait.
He has the whole field. He's got a tighten split because he wants to work out.
Yeah.
He's got all that field. So outside of that, UCLA doesn't score. So I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not willing to kind of entertain. And it's not just because I like one guy versus the other. I'm just giving you the reality of how those teaching things work. You know what I mean?
100%. So with the offensive coordinator side of things, I really think, to address Lance's point, because he asked, hey, is there any value of just like sending a message to your team through making either a change in play call or letting a guy go midseason, whatever. That was his argument, right? And it's a fair question. I think the answer to that question is how the team, and that includes the other coaches, feel about the guy that's being made an example out of, right? If there's an inherent disconnect between Satterfield and the players, or Satterfield and the other offensive coaches, then yes, sending a message can be useful. And that falls, I don't know why, I came up with a list on my own of like, hey, if I were to change a coordinator in season, what would be the reasons I would do that?
Yeah, that's funny too, because I've got a list of what I think is coaching and which is player.
Because number one,
we at the fans just have kind of dumbed it down, like they just hate Satterfield,
right? But I looked 4 weeks ago, and I get people weren't thrilled with the offense then, but when Dylan Ryle is making throws, it looks a lot better.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can sit here and say that, right? And still be like, yeah, we think Dylan Ryle is going to be really good. He's not making some of the throws he made a month ago.
I've just never seen a player get more comments couched.
Yeah.
He
missed a lot of throws on Saturday.
We're as guilty as enabling as anyone in Lincoln that gets a paycheck. I hear my heart.
I think we're terrified he's going to leave.
It's incredible.
I think that's what it is.
It's incredible.
But so
it is absolutely incredible.
So I think there's basically three reasons why you would make a change at coordinator in season. Number one, you have somebody in-house that can do a better job.
Number two, you're the Los Angeles or Las Vegas Raiders.
Well, they're dysfunctional, so maybe that's number 4, is you have a dysfunctional franchise.
Didn't they just fire
their team
OC?
only scored
Didn't
41.
they just fire their OC yesterday?
They did, and their offensive line coach and somebody else on the offensive staff.
It happens.
It's just a whole cleaning house.
All right, go ahead.
So number one, if you've got somebody else better in-house to do the job, that makes sense, right? You got a better alternative. Gotcha. I got it. I don't think that's the case currently. Number two, something off the field happens, you got to let him go. That's an obvious one, right? The third one is what Lance was talking about, or what I'm talking about with Lance, is if there's an inherent disconnect, like if the coach has lost the room.
Yeah.
And you just it's not coming back.
Well, what's everybody talking about this morning? Was the murmurs that everybody saw on Saturday. Well, Coach Rule had the play sheet.
Yeah.
Coach Rule had the play sheet. I'm well aware.
Yeah.
Well aware.
So unless one of those things is true, and I don't know, I'm not sitting here pretending I don't know things that I know. I don't know.
What if the disconnect was between the – it's not like he hasn't pulled play calling duties from Coach Satt before.
100%.
And we would never know because he's not going to
say it.
He's not going to do that to them.
He's not going to say them out loud. Like, even if he hadn't been coaching, even if he hadn't been calling plays for a month, we would never know.
Yeah.
He would never tell us.
We've wondered – how many times does this happen? Let's be honest.
With Nebraska?
Yeah.
A bunch.
Yeah, right?
We happened with Frost.
On the defensive side, on the offensive side.
Happened with Pelini, with Coach. Yeah.
I mean,
we do this all the time.
It's just what we do.
Who's calling plays?
It's just
I don't know. Who's calling plays?
I just think it's interesting that we we in the general masses want people to be better than we're willing to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why? Because they make more?
Which, it's funny. Somebody brought that up to me.
It's incredible.
Somebody brought that up to me. They go, hey, you know, because I brought up the fact that Ryle has been missing some stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I don't know if you can see this on TV or not, but in the press box, when you're seeing from the bird's eye view,
that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, isn't it?
There's a lot.
Best and the worst.
Yeah, there's a lot of dudes open.
You look at it differently.
I'm just like, oh God, you got to make some of those throws, bud.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there and I go, hey, like I get that, maybe we don't love.
It makes it hard to be critical, doesn't it?
Harder, yeah.
Yeah.
Of Satterfield for sure.
But then you could say to yourself, okay,
makes it easier to be critical of other things.
You're inside the red zone. You ran the ball twice out of two back.
Mm-hmm.
You're down to this yard line.
Yeah.
Or you get a timeout. Why this play? So you can still come back and say those
100%.
things.
Yeah. Like I didn't love the fourth down. I didn't love the fourth down goal line,
especially after timeout.
Yes, thought it was terrible.
And here's the other thing while we're on it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I.
No, go.
If you're going to do check with me's,
mm-hmm.
you better go earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got time.
Yeah.
You got to have time.
Because
burning a timeout there is brutal.
The secrets the things that we're not willing to talk about out loud are our offensive coordinator gets a lot of criticism, but there is a lot of autonomy at the quarterback spot too. Now, if the first
is that part of the problem?
So if you said to me, DB, maybe we gave the keys
too much,
too much
too soon,
I would be like, yep, that's their fault.
Yeah.
Right. Like, that's a different conversation
than
the one we're having, and we just blame guys without any solutions.
Because I'm willing to entertain some more philosophical issues with the offensive coordinator.
Me too.
And maybe we'll have that discussion coming up next with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Joining us now to kick off hour number 2 on Hurrdat Sports Radio is our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm good, guys. I'm good. How are you?
Just living the dream.
That's being honest. I'm good. Basketball season begins today.
I do love college basketball. You know this about me.
Yeah.
It's too early for basketball. It's got to be 2 weeks from now, but they're starting it anyway.
Yeah, rock chalk, preseason number 1, man. It's like,
yeah, that's right.
Death taxes and KU with expectations. But Sam, so here, this is the question that I've gotten all week, or not all week, for probably 48 hours. And full disclosure, the reason I struggle with it is because I come from an era in an environment where this would be blasphemy. Okay? So I'm trying to unlearn and evolve with the times. But I get this question a ton. Hey, Dylan Raiola isn't playing very well, but how much of his backsliding or regression is on the coaches? Right? Like, so what I hear is we're like we like accountability, but we like it based on whether we like a guy. And I come from right. You're vibing with me. I can't wait to hear your response. Mm-hmm. Like, I played with some fellas, right? And I never felt like T. Fraze was bigger than the program. I never felt like LP was bigger than the program. I never felt like Zach Wiegert was bigger than the program. I didn't feel like Trev Alberts was bigger than the program. Like, we always talked about like this team unified thing. Do I need to get over that, or how is that partly our fault for speaking this narrative into existence?
That it's the coach's fault that Dylan isn't playing well?
That we we pick a side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the way that Dylan has been talked about by the coaches actually lends itself to it has to be the coaches because
at one point they said we got to get everybody to where Dylan is.
Yeah, which I'll be honest with you, I did not really believe.
No,
I thought that was an interesting statement, and I'm like, I don't think that Justin Evans is not vibing on the level that Dylan is. So I think there's been some things that have been said, and I respect Justin Evans. That's what I'm saying. I think there's some things that have been said that have set him apart in some ways. And, as Matt Rule said in his Ohio State press conference, which I also don't think he should have said, is, do you know how hard it is to come up here and never throw a player under the bus or whatever he was saying? And so you're seeing some of these moments break open.
Why did that bother you, Sam?
Because I thought it was a little self-congratulatory. I don't need you to tell me that your job's hard. A lot of people have hard jobs and make a lot less money.
No, but wait. I don't want to go. I don't want to steal your. But
but that's just how I am. Like I'm like a blue collar person at heart. I don't need a coach to tell me it's hard to stay positive or anything like that. Like, see, I'll be honest with you. I did not love that speech in general because I thought it was not really about the team, but mostly about, I don't know, whatever the coaches were trying to do. And B, it came after a loss. And C, and I did not do this yesterday or today, but other people did. It came back to haunt him when people were like, well, how's that championship mindset? And I'm like, that's why you don't say that stuff.
Yeah.
Because somebody's is gonna go full bore with it after the game, and then the next week they're gonna be like, well, you didn't play against UCLA, so how's the thing? I played it down at the time, and I'm playing it down now. Other than I feel for him a little bit that's being thrown back in his face because I understood where his heart was, but I didn't think that was like the right moment to pull out the 9-minute speech after you lose a game.
Okay, but why do we hate context though, Sam? Why? Because the context of what he said was that was the first time that he saw a championship mindset. He didn't say it was like, we got to understand the difference between in the moment and present progressive, right? Like,
sure.
Because we can't just be dismissive and say sure, because at the very end he said, now we'll see what happens next week. Like,
because if we don't do it again,
it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. Right. Like he said
that's why maybe you distill the 8-minute speech into it.
Oh, fudge. Okay.
That's why you have to be thoughtful about it.
Why can't we be better at how we receive the information? Right.
I think I was pretty good at how I received the information.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about generally speaking, because even in your answer, you're setting yourself apart from how everybody else maybe received it. Like it's just human nature if you think differently to say, well, not me, but everybody else. But that sounds like it's the one thing that you didn't like.
Well, I think part of what I saw in that statement is just that, like, because you ask about Dylan, right? And you ask about, whether you feel like he's being held accountable versus the coaches or whatever it is.
Or why did we pick sides?
And I'm just saying that within the context of coaching culture over the last however many years, you have seen this sort of like, well, it's never the kids. It's never them. It's always us. We did it. Yeah. Now, if you say that you didn't execute, you're throwing the kid under the bus, which I don't agree with. Rule said that too. I understand where he's coming from with some of the things that he's saying. I understand the context of them, but I just feel like we're in an era now where maybe because the players are being paid, like there was a Bear yesterday who didn't start. And the reason he didn't start is because he acted like a complete moron on the last play of the game against the Commanders. Mm-hmm. And his comment yesterday was like, I was a little hurt. And I'm like, you were a little hurt? You were hurt? I was hurt. You were hurt? You were dancing before the Hail Mary. And you did the wrong thing. Like, how could you be hurt? maybe you hurt it yourself. Like that stuff like that. Like we've reached a point where like the people to whom we give the most ascribe the greatest amount of understanding and context are millionaires. It's like, okay, I get it. You know, I understand it. Like, I understand. And Dylan Raiola is not a millionaire by his own account. But, you know, like, I understand where people are coming from in terms of like, hey, it isn't his fault. It's got to be the coach's fault. And sometimes people will use people's salaries to justify why it's their fault. I totally get that too. But that's part of what's going on. I think Raiola has not played great over the last month. I'm sitting in the press box, and literally everybody around me is like, well, he must be hurt. I'm like, I have no idea if he's hurt. They're not saying he's hurt. Maybe he's hurt. I don't know. Like, he ran last week, and that was because, according to, you know, one of the OCs, well, he subconsciously did it. And I'm like, I just think there's been, you know, it's a program that's not winning right now. There's frustrating moments within it. In my rewind today, I point out that, like, Satterfield last week said he thought he was talking out of place by speculating why Raiola scrambled against Ohio State. And then he was like, I didn't have a conversation with him. And I didn't know he could run like that. He was almost like he was saying, hey, whatever this kid is, it has nothing to do with me. They've left me out of the conversation. He didn't say that, but the way he answered the question made it seem as though this guy over here, he's the quarterback, and I just call plays, and we hope that those two things sync up.
Yeah.
And you would know more than I about like how much Satterfield's talking to Raiola and whatever. But it reminded me of 3 years ago when they had Frost, and then they had Lubick, and then they had Verduzco, and then they got tired of Verduzco being in the box. So they put him on the field, and he's short, and he couldn't see. And he's like, I'm a hobbit, and I can't see. And it feels like there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen. And Dylan seems like he's one of the chefs. So I don't know. It's a tough situation, you know? That's a long answer, but that's kind of where I think things are at a little bit.
That might have been your greatest segment.
Sam.
There's so much in there. I don't even know which part to start with.
I don't either. I'm trying to filter through here in real time.
Maybe you could fill in some things. Like, so here's what I would say.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what's going. Like, when Dylan Raiola runs back into the game, and I feel terrible that I did not watch the two plays before to see what he was doing on the sideline. But when he runs back into the game, he's 15 yards down the sideline.
So I only know what's happening with him because real time Jessica is telling us. Like, she's giving a literal play-by-play. He's in the tent.
Did he warm up?
No.
Did he even throw the ball?
No.
What is he doing going back in the game? And like, who's governing that moment?
Okay. All right. I had this conversation yesterday. I'm sorry, Ravi.
You probably ought to throw the ball a couple of times before you go back in.
Sam, let me ask you something. When you heard Coach Rule say, hey, that wasn't my decision, if he's good to go, he was cleared. Did you hear, A, I trust the medical team, or B, I'm not in tune with what was going on? What did you hear real time?
I heard A.
That he trusts the medical team.
Sure.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
But that's not the same. That's like he's not.
That's a sidebar. That's not a validate or vindicate.
Yeah,
I found it curious that a lot of people. I felt like a lot of people picked at that like he was. I'm like the guy was holding a play sheet. I'm pretty sure he understands where they are in the context of the offense. You know what I mean? Like I didn't.
Yeah, he did have a play sheet, didn't he?
Yeah.
Did he always have a play sheet?
Sam.
I look at it on.
What is wrong? Like, what is this? Is this Monday? It's just right. It's your segment, Sam.
So I'm watching the game again. I'm like, Matt Rule's got a big play sheet. And there's nothing wrong with him taking the whole thing over. In fact, I think that might be a way to do it. Eventually, Jim Harbaugh, and there was a moment in Jim Harbaugh's tenure at Michigan where he literally said that like 5 different guys were having input on each play, and then someone was saying it. And I can't even remember who it was.
It happens all the time. Not all the time.
And so eventually Jim Harbaugh just, he handed it to the one guy who went to Miami, and then it kind of came back to him, and then Sharon Moore was sort of doing it, and then Harbaugh was just doing it. And then Mort was doing it because Harbaugh got suspended and all this other stuff. So, like, I get that coaches have to move back and forth. But the moment in the game where Raiola runs back in, he's running back in the game, I'm just telling you that the reaction in the press box, and you were a couple of rooms down, is he goes down and people are like, what's going on? And people literally speculated he ran onto the field to, like, save clock. And I'm like, that's not what's going on
That's
there.
that's not what happened.
No, like, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't make that kid do that. But I noticed he was running from like 12 yards away, and I'm like, do they know he's going back in the game? Did he just make that decision, unilaterally? And I'm not saying that he wasn't hurt. It's just like it feels like things are not quite as tight as Rule would like them to be.
I've trained a little bit on this gym over on about 22nd and Sprague, and I'm just telling you, when you get hit in the kidney or like in the back like that, sometimes your body just shuts down, and you're not sure when it's going to happen. Like I've been there. You get hit with a body blow, and it's like, and you think like, I'm okay, it hurts, but then it's like, so I don't know, because I watched him jog, and again, I'm just getting the play-by. That's one of the things, just because we're like good at. I'm getting the play-by-play that he's coming back on the field. So immediately our eyes snapped to where he is, and he seemed to be jogging okay, and he got ready to do something with his hands, talking to the guys in the huddle, and it was like a sniper got him.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at Sharpie, and I was like, I don't know, maybe it's a spasm, or like, I don't know. But I do know, like, I don't think that was some orchestrated, like, contrived deal. Like,
No.
you just don't put it. You just don't put him through that.
No. But here's my point: is that, like, the game that Marcus Satterfield is calling changes dramatically the minute that Dylan Raiola runs onto the field. And my question is, did the coaches know he was going to do that? Because Marcus Satterfield has to call a different football play based on what happens there. Like, he no longer is calling the, let's run Heinrich Harburg as a tailback play when Dylan Raiola is running onto the field, and he just took this massive shot to his back. And so my question is, and I guess I can ask Rule this, is did they know that he's running back onto the field? Because that changes what they're going to do on offense. And I'm not saying he wasn't cleared by the doctors. I'm saying, like, there's a difference between being cleared by the doctors and the coaches saying, you go on the field because we are going to run different plays because we want you out there. And I just
so
that
does anybody have any? Because I've been sometimes, I don't know if this is what happened. Like, short of not asking Dylan, sometimes when a quarterback is ready to go, he just goes back in. Like, I'm telling you. Like, he just goes back out on the field.
Like, you're the starter. You just go back out when you're ready.
Yeah. Like, I've done that. Like, Christian will say, oh, hey, I'm ready. And he just goes, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean I don't have control of the situation. It just means, like, oh, he's the guy. So if you letting me know you're ready, then you're ready. So, like, it could have just been as simple as that, and we're overthinking it.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe. I think it probably was as simple as that. But then, when he grabs his back, and it's like, it's one of those moments where, anyway, as it relates to the offense, it just felt like on Saturday that the operation, and I understand what Rule's saying, but the operation seemed to be moving in a way that not only was like, hey, let's try to time this up right, but, like, we're not quite sure what to call kind of thing. Like, we're a little bit panicky. We're not playing with the kind of pace that we probably can. UCLA tired. We're giving them 32 seconds to rest. Like, their defense had time to kind of regroup physically after a lot of these plays. Somebody sent me a message, and it was a good one, that after the long throw to Barney, that's a point where you run up and you have a play ready to go, so they can't review that play. And you're playing with pace, and it felt like they were a little slow there. And just little things, Damon, where it feels like the operation isn't quite as smooth as it could be. And I don't know if that's because they're trying to figure out what will work for Dylan, because this isn't really about Raiola. I mean, it's not. He isn't playing perfectly, but then no player ever did, and so, like, you have to live with some of the mistakes that players make. It's the operation around him that I feel like just wasn't as good as it could be on Saturday. And I didn't think the play calling was as good as it could be. And I just didn't feel like the operation seemed to be moving with confidence. And I thought fans saw that too, and they were getting annoyed by the time it was taking to do everything. And it just felt like the process was slow. That's just my perception of it. Rule knows way more than I do, and way more than I would ever know.
No, I mean, he
so,
can
like,
he can count, right? He can see that it's 21 plays in the red zone, right? I mean, that's a big number. To not be yielding the points you wanted, right? Yeah.
He knows his stuff, and so like I understood what he was trying to say as it related to the clock management. But from my own perspective, I'm like, man, I'd like to have 4 minutes to run that last drive, because I've seen this operation in 2-minute situations when Dylan's not out there, and it's a slog. I'd like to have a run. I'd like the opportunity to run the football a little bit on my final drive versus doing what they were doing. What's ironic is that Heinrich Haarberg threw a pretty good pass that was intercepted. It's just that the UCLA safety that came over is a really darn good football player, and he made a nice break on the ball. He dislodged Barney from the ball, and it was picked off by somebody else. It was a good play by the UCLA player. Haarberg did really nothing wrong on that play, in my opinion. He threw a good ball, and UCLA just made a better play. And the reality is UCLA had pretty good football players who might have just overall been a little bit better than Nebraska, and that's probably hard for Husker fans to swallow, but on Saturday, it seemed true. It seemed that UCLA was just a little bit better than Nebraska in some areas. And that probably was a cold water in the face.
Sam, how do you weigh whether it's offensive play calling, defensive lapses with guys that older guys that we think are good, that we think have a lot of talent, versus them just not executing, right? I mean, we brought up the execution thing with talking about Rule earlier, but like at some point, do you just have to say, and DB brought this up, hey, we're not winning with you, we can lose without you, and play different guys? You know, like I don't, like, how do you kind of weigh that in your mind while having this conversation? Because there's a lot of guys out there that we think should be making plays that aren't making plays.
Yeah. Are we thinking on the defense or on the offense?
Pick one.
Well, I'm going to defer my feelings on the defense until all the way to the end of the season, because I think I want to see it kind of play out, because maybe they'll come out and win 3 in a row. It's possible. And the defense will be the reason. They'll be like, you know what?
Sure.
They came through. I think, but it's interesting. You know, I think that unit hasn't quite been what everybody hoped it would be this season.
Wait, which week though? Because while you're not wrong, like, which defense are we talking about? Because there are times they're really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we didn't think they were good, statistically, they were still good. So, like, when you say that, and you're not alone, there's probably 90% of the people that think the same way. Like, what are you talking about? Are you talking about Ohio State defense, or are you talking about first 24 plays UCLA defense?
I think if you were to ask the defenders themselves, they would say that they didn't play to their standard in at least 4 of the games this season.
4, okay, yeah, that's probably fair. That's probably fair.
And that including Northern Iowa.
So their standard.
I think their standard and their expectations.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think they feel like they've played.
No, I like that answer, because I like the fact that it's you're talking about their standard. They didn't play up to their standard of defense. Okay.
Right. And so my point is that, like, if we get to the end of the season and they say, you know, we just didn't play up to our standards in half of the games that we played this year, then I think there's some questions you can ask and maybe some conclusions that can be drawn. And I think it may have something to do with, you know, maybe players were elite last year or great, and maybe that was the level, and they reached it, and they maybe duplicated it or came a little below, but it didn't get overwhelmingly better. I think that's possible when players are older.
Are you surprised that we're talking about defense? Because I was mad at Ravi for even bringing it up, and he wasn't even bringing it up. He just was echoing the sentiment that he was hearing over the weekend, and I'm like, of all the things and we could nitpick at the second. I get it.
No, I've written
But
I've
I
written,
do
like,
I
almost
do like the
exclusively about
fact
the
that
offense.
at least you said you have the wherewithal to say it's based on their own standard, not whether it's good enough to win games.
Right. So I've written almost exclusively about the offense. I did 2 weeks ago. I did again today. In 15 Big Ten games under Matt Rule, Nebraska's offense is averaging 16.6 points per game and 4.76 yards per play. And these are 100th to below national rankings in what you would consider conference-only games. These are not. So the reality is they're not scoring enough points to win Big Ten games consistently. Their defense is giving up, I don't know, somewhere around 18 or 19 points, I think, in those games. The defense is playing well enough to win Big Ten games consistently. The offense is not scoring enough points. And if we want to say, well, the offense's job is to protect the defense, and they've been doing that, that's fine. You can do that all you want. But the reality is that I think the primary issue is the offense. I'll defer on the defense mostly because by the end of the year, if they say we did not meet our own expectations in half of the games and we finished 6-6 or whatever it is, that'll be something worth going back and examining why. Because they did have a lot of veterans. To me, the larger issue is on the offensive side of the ball, and I think it's a deal where Rule's going to have to make fixes either now, probably not now, but maybe later in his in the off season, because I just don't think big picture, not small picture, big picture, this is a good enough offense to win a Big Ten title. I just don't.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, we appreciate it as always. Great stuff.
That's good.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks,
See you, Sam. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Make sure you get over to Union Omaha. Their season is still going. They won on Sunday 1-0, as they say in soccer. They're moving on to the semifinals of the USL League One playoffs. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get your tickets for that semifinal, round 2 matchup, unionomaha.com. Before we hop into what Sam was saying, because there was a lot in there, let's get to our guy Nate.
I'm a hobbit. I can't see.
That was hilarious. Nate, what's going on, man?
That was hilarious. I almost spit out my coffee and that went down. You will now never refer to me as the lowest common denominator while Sam is doing stuff like that. That was so a couple things. One, I think, and Damon and I, we've been doing this for like 10 years, so we kind of understand each other, which is why, Rav, you would hear Damon advocate for me while you think I'm being insane, because sometimes, as you call it, my asshole bombs have a way of coming true after time. They factor out, right? It's not always the front end, I admit. So here's the thing. I am absolutely positively out on Satterfield. We've beaten that into a drum. I'm not going to go there. There's a billion reasons why, logical reasons, cool-headed reasons.
Yep.
I am definitely going to be honest with you. I'm out on Raiola. There are things that I have seen in his mentality, in the way he processes, in the way he moves, that tell me Raiola is not a dog. He is a LeBron James. He's not a Michael Jordan. He needs to be surrounded by top-tier talent in order to be successful. If you remove Raiola from Nebraska and stick him at UT, Georgia, USC a few years ago, or Ohio State now, this kid might actually win a Heisman. The talent level is absolutely unimpeachable. However, because of things like how quick he's going to check down, the absolute unbelievable refusal to run in any way, shape, or form, the deer in the headlights when he doesn't have 5 people that are going to be in the NFL blocking for him, there's no ability to lift a team by himself. He is absolutely not going to be the guy that puts this program and lifts it on his shoulders. It's not there. He's not that guy. He's not Kobe. He doesn't have that Michael mentality. It's not there, right? He's great in press conferences. He's got a great arm. I agree that the defensive talk is absolutely stupid. I mean, that's dumb. Tony White is where he needs to be. But this fire mid-season thing, I said last week, I kind of concede, maybe it's not wise to do this in the mid-season, but I have enough friends in that locker room that wear jerseys saying things cryptically, non-directly that tell me that this locker room is ready to implode upon itself, right? I got a background in leadership, both educationally and in the military. This is becoming a toxic internal culture because finger pointing is taking place. The defense sees we're doing our part. The offense is not doing their part. At this point, this happens sometimes in the military. A battalion commander will relieve a company commander, not because the company commander did anything wrong, but because the troops have lost faith and confidence in the company commander's ability to care for them, execute the mission, train them to standard, or he's just a toxic leader. I don't think Satterfield is in the latter category. Satterfield has to go. And when you balance the overall locker room effect in the context of Matt Rule attempting to build culture, Satterfield's presence is now a bigger danger than jettisoning him could ever be. I mean, he has to go, and he has to go now. I will tell you, and Damon is not going to like this because I know him, but
this ought to be
Indiana,
good.
Oh, well, I mean, but I want you to hear the perspective, the undergird.
I got you.
Right?
You get plenty of runway.
I know you do, brother. That's why I love you. You're my guy. Indiana, and the first half of the UCLA game was every bit as bad as 70-10 in Lubbock, Texas. And the reason that sounds overreactionary and stupid is because the Lubbock game was only 3 years removed from playing in a national title and 6 years removed from winning a national title. Because of that, that had a shock to our system, and now we are numb and we don't feel it. But if you look at the dink and dunk, 5 yards under, okay, now that they're committing to that, we're going to do a 5-yard draw play that Texas Tech used to destroy Cosgrove. Oh, that happened in Indiana. That was the same game. They were calling even some of the same plays. And I'm not comparing White to Cosgrove. White is absolutely hireable at any university. But they even were attacking White's scheme the same way. I mean, it was inexplicable how much Tony White is overcommitting to the zone. I mean, unbelievable. UCLA shouldn't have scored more than twice-ish, maybe once.
Well, so here's the thing, Nate. I don't know about Did we lose him?
Yeah, I think we lost him.
Shoot. I don't know, about marrying the run game, fitting in the run game with scheme-wise in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Because you saw what happened. And I'll give you just a quick example. Why did the speed sweep and the toss plays work when they were in that truck bunch set? Because you're in man-to-man.
Mm-hmm.
So, you get motion, and all of a sudden it's on you in a hurry because you're in man-to-man. If you're in zone, you can move. So I think Nebraska wanted to figure out the balance between playing different coverages behind the front so they could still fit in the run game.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you have to tinker with. Again, want to change a couple of things this week, and it's like, okay, well, what are we going to play behind it so we can fit in the run game?
Yeah.
Right? That's always the thing, and I think the longer that Coach Butler and Coach White work together, the better off they're going to be. I know the conversation you want to have. At least I think I do, right? About defense and offense, but it's one I think people are afraid to have on shows because you don't want to make a habit of calling guys out.
Yeah.
But there are guys individually that have to play better.
That's why I asked Sam. That's why I asked Sam the question, right? That's why I didn't make a distinction between offense and defense with Sam, is because I think there are guys on both sides of the ball that need to play better. Obviously, schematically, I think there's a big difference between offense and defense. I'd be an idiot not to, right? Even if I'm not a fire Satterfield midseason guy, I can still understand, hey, the defense is ahead of the offense schematically. That's fine. Where I don't think the defense is ahead of the offense is you've got guys that should be better or need to play better in order to be who we think this team can be that are not playing at that level.
Yeah.
Whether that's offense or defense, that is universal. So here's where I'll give some credence to Nate. And to be fair, I called you a dumbass mostly for the Rule comments at the very end of the last call.
Yeah, Nate,
that's where he got me.
Even, like my buddy Aaron, some guys just don't vibe with Nate, but it's so
because I vibed with a lot of what he said. I really did.
I can eat the meat and spit out the bones.
But when he throws in the Rule thing at the end, I'm like, hey, we're way too early for that. Let's knock that off.
Yeah, there's nothing.
That was the last call, not this call. This call, he was fine. I didn't really have any issues.
Listen, Rule, he's the guy for the. Can I just go ahead? Let me let you finish because there's something I want to say too about.
Well, no, I'll double down on Rule right now. Listen, if you're expecting to come in and listen to this show and hear me say that we need to reevaluate the rule thing, you're going to be sorely mistaken, because I'm going down with that ship one way or another. Like, Rule's my guy.
Yeah.
I am sitting here. I've said that from the start, and here's why. Because who was one of the first people in this state to be out on Frost? This guy. I was one of the very first ones. So I'm not afraid to call for it. I'm not afraid to say things out loud. But I didn't believe philosophically in what Frost was about, and I didn't think it was going to work for that reason. The reason I'm going to go down with the ship, if I have to, with Rule, is for the exact opposite reason. I believe what that dude is about to his core. Either he has pulled the greatest con job on me of all time, and that's fine. I'll own it. Or this is going to work. Those are the two options I'm sitting with, and I'm okay with either option. And if I have to sit here 4 years from now or whenever and eat it and be like, yeah, he fooled me, okay, I will. But until then, I'm in 100%. So I'm not even – that's why if somebody like Nate, the last call, not this one, when he starts being like, I don't know about Rule either, that's when you get called a dumbass.
So, well, the thing about it is so Coach Rule, he's obviously got some tough situations. He's got some tough things.
He's got some stuff he's got to navigate.
Now, when you're putting together – and we asked – I was so good to see our buddy. How about his smile when he walked in? You don't get to see him smile like that.
I know. He likes us, I think.
But I was picking the brain of our fearless leader, Dollar Bill, about some situational stuff. And he said, I don't know. It's hard, right? Like, sometimes you need to surround yourself with people to – he basically said sometimes you need people around you that can offset your blind spot.
Deficiencies.
Your blind spot.
100%. But you have to be able to identify your blind spots in order to do that, right?
Right. So while I get the Satterfield, the disdain, you have to, that's how you're going to go with your staff, you have to balance it out with not opposites, but things to offset
complements.
That. So you can't be okay in this area and not very hard in this area. Like, you can't have a bunch of similar personalities if you have deficiencies. You have to have
a little
balance.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.
That was 100% accurate.
Yes.
That's how Penn State pulled away after getting off to the slow start. Indiana did it. That part is spot on. Teams had pulled away late after they had gotten – that's why I thought it was a depth thing.
With UCLA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though all week I was like, it's going to be tough, right? Just because –
yeah.
And I got to say this, like, I said this real time talking to Sharpie, and you see it is, and hopefully they'll be honest, because it's not cheating, it's gamesmanship and it's film study.
Mm-hmm.
They clearly knew run pass Nebraska.
Yeah.
There was a play in the second quarter. And I even asked you hypothetically, like real time. I go, hey, UCLA was getting in and out of stuff at the very last second.
Like shifting
early on,
yeah.
I was talking about stemming and kind of they were in radar where they didn't have anybody with their finger or their hands in the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Sharpie, I go, gosh, you see how late they're getting out of that? They clearly have a tendency on what Nebraska's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
They did it all game. Now, they got caught a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a third and it was like a 3rd and 12 or a 3rd and 9 or something like that, and he did like a really late shift, and Nebraska ran for a fair amount to put him in position. But for the most part, Nebraska would get in a tight formation.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, UCLA would bring like a boundary blitz. They'd run down counter from the backside. So it's not so much, well, this is what Coach Satterfield does, because, that there's some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
But they clearly knew run versus pass.
So you think there was like an indicator
100%.
real time?
100%.
Not in tendency, not in, hey, typically in this down and distance.
Nope.
Like real time on the field, they're looking at the offense and saying, this is a runner, this is a pass.
There's definitely a tell. Definitely a tell.
So that's interesting.
Well, the only guy, there's only a couple, like I said, there's only a couple guys I trust, like football-wise. I had a conversation with him yesterday morning.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this is early, too, because I had to be at Channel 7 at, whatever. But I called him. I'm like, you see this late movement, these late stems? Like there's a tell. I
Yeah.
wish I knew what it was.
Right. I bet Nebraska wishes they knew what it was too.
Yeah, because I would do that all the time. Like
If you knew what was coming, because
yeah, I would show you one thing. I'd say, hey, I'd say, hey, Coach Queen. Like, yeah, for sure.
this goes to something that I heard a lot on Saturday, right? Because
you know what I'm saying though?
100%. No.
Like the ball would be being snapped.
Yeah.
And UCLA would be moving.
Yeah.
Normally, that's a death sentence.
Right, because if you're moving at the snap, then you're caught, and
Yeah.
then they've got you.
Yeah.
Right. So this goes to something that I was hearing a lot during the game on Saturday, because I mentioned, hey, if UCLA is going to be sending 6 or 7 guys, which they did
Those
frequently,
zero blitzes.
like
Oh yeah.
Nebraska, there's somebody open by default, and Nebraska has to hit those guys.
Yeah.
And so I got all the responses a lot about like hot reads and like getting out of the play and stuff like that. But if they're changing so late that you don't know it's a zero blitz until the ball is snapped, then it's too late for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's the answer to what my question was real time. And like, hey, how are they not finding open guys when you're sending 6 or 7? Because the pre-snap read wasn't that they were sending 6 or 7.
Yeah. And that's one of those, like, so two things can be true at once, right? So if you're down on coordinating, and see, those are things where like hot routes.
Mhm.
I mean, everybody has them.
Right.
Right. Go settle where they came from, this, that, and the other. So that's a whole separate discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But the tendency tipping or whatever was clearly a real thing. I watched them run. They ran down counter
Mm-hmm.
from the backside on a boundary blitz
Mm-hmm.
to a 2-by.
Yeah.
You have to know that that's coming.
Yeah. Otherwise, it just never happens.
We had a deal Friday against Westview. They're like, hey, an H-back set to a 2-back nub. This is the only time we're going to chase this from the backside. Because that's all they did out of it.
Right.
Right? So
Because if you didn't know it was coming back to you, you would never do that.
nope. Because fundamentally, it's not.
not
I mean,
sound.
you're rolling the dice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, and it's just like just the late movement. And I want to go back to something that Nate said about the staff. And this isn't specific to people. It's about personality traits. And it's talking about, Bill, when he said, hey, and clearly a guy that's had a lot of successful companies knows a thing or two about personnel, right?
Building teams and yeah.
So, like, if you have a certain type of personality that permeates your staff, you have to have some balance.
You got to offset some things.
Right? So if one of the reasons, because I'll go all the way back to something Coach Rule said at the very, very, very beginning when he was putting the staff together. And he goes, the thing about Sad is, he's a super loyal guy. He's hardworking. He loves ball.
He's going to do what he's told.
He's going to do what I ask. Like I trust him, right? He's a guy that if you have to pull play calling duty, I've said this story out loud. I said this.
This was back in spring, I think.
No, this was when he first got hired.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
it was a long time ago.
Okay, yeah.
It seemed like a weird
Thing to mention.
As a compliment.
Yeah.
Right? Like, well, and I could pull play calling duties from him and you never know. But that got me thinking, okay, you're starting from the ground up. You want to start a job with guys that you trust to lift this platform off the ground, because you have to start with culture. So that's fine. But everything else that you bring in around that has to complement that same deal. So if I've got a nice guy here and I got a trustworthy guy here and I got a trustworthy guy here and I got a trustworthy guy here, at some point you have to have a guy or 2 or 3 that's going to draw a line in the sand and be like, wait a minute.
It's kind of an SOB.
Yeah.
Like you kind of need a mean-spirited guy.
Yeah, kick his ass out of here. Or he's not doing this. Let's do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's from like player to player. That's coach to player. And that's coach to coach. So like if you wanted to talk to me about you needing to diversify the staff from a temperament standpoint,
Sure.
I'd probably start there.
Yeah, I'll hear that.
I'd be vibing with that. Because you have to be, and I said this, like absolute power can corrupt absolutely. So you have to, because you put a lot of pressure on yourself. If you don't have other people around you that can check you, that your word is bond.
Yeah.
you don't always want that.
Checks and balances are positive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you don't always want that. So, and I mean, I'm 2 years into saying this, and I still believe it to be the case. Like there has to be people. Coach Rule needs checks and balances.
Mhm.
Tony White needs checks and balances. Troy Dana needs checks and balances. Like you just do
All the way up.
all the way to the top, because I think it's too much pressure on one individual to always be right all the time from their vantage point.
Mhm.
Right? You need some collective counsel.
Yeah.
To say, hey, listen, right?
Let's
If
just look at this from a different point of view.
like the way this guy's playing,
Mhm.
but I may have a blind spot as his position coach, then the coordinator's got to be like, okay, if the coordinator says to the position coach, man, you got your guys, you're coaching your guys, then somebody needs to tell the coordinator, hey, man,
Hey, that guy's not getting it done.
make the executive decision.
Yeah, you got to
Right,
have the
like,
hard conversation.
So that's kind of where you have to start if you want to hold guys, because I'll go back to what we talked about in the very beginning of the show. It's about accountability.
But that's from top down, right?
Top.
We always think about
down.
accountability as like, hey, coaches have to hold players accountable.
Yeah.
But what's the structure you talked about? Head coach has to hold coordinators accountable. Yeah. Coordinators have to hold position coaches accountable. Position coaches have to hold players accountable. And if there is a miss somewhere in that chain, the next guy up has to hold the next people down accountable.
Yeah.
Right? Like if Satterfield's temperament, just as an example, isn't what
I'm a loyalty, good person guy. I'm gonna do what I'm told. Then you need a guy that's gonna kick the card a little bit.
Then you need Glenn Thomas or whoever, like Glenn Thomas,
whomever else it is,
or Coach Rule to be like, hey, this isn't working. This guy isn't getting it done. Let's go. Here's the other complicating factor about all of this is sometimes those blind spots aren't. Sometimes those blind spots, I think, are NIL dollars.
Oh, 100. Yeah, chalk your losses up. Move on.
Right?
Move on.
I think sometimes those blind spots are, we're paying this guy X. We have to play him. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have to play him.
I'm 100% with you.
I think that's some of the blind spots, though, is you're sitting here and you're going like, okay, because you think too far down the line. You go, okay, if we paid this guy and then we end up benching him, then the next guy's not going to want to come here. Fine.
Because at what point do you think guys are like, hey, I said UCLA is going to be pretty good. This is going to be a grimy one-score game where they realize that
I don't want to play a grimy one-score game.
They lost to Minnesota the last drive. You were tied against LSU. You didn't hammer. You beat Rutgers on the road. Like the record was, like they're better than their record.
We said this last week. We said it last week.
Yeah.
We've got Adam McClintock, college football professor, coming up next. Get into some analytics and nitty-gritty with him here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We're joined now by Adam McClintock, our college football professor. What's going on, Adam?
Hey, fellas. Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning?
Hey, Mac, I think you have a pretty good idea.
It's a little rough out here. It's a little rough.
You don't say.
No. And I've come to grips. Like I'm kind of cool with the pound of flesh thing. Like I totally understand that, but my brain is just weird. Like I'm trying to figure out answers. Right? I could tell you a lot of the problems. I'm trying to figure out answers. You want to help us figure out some answers, Mac? What do you think?
I'm going to try. Let's see.
Let's start globally first before we go micro into Nebraska. You looked at what happened in the top 25, and everybody talks about, well, NIL, and you can get better in a hurry. How soon before the analytics catch up to like cohesiveness and kind of a core root of something as an indicator more than just player movement?
I think it may take a couple more years, but we're already seeing right now that the best way to construct a roster is not to go heavy into transfer portal. That's not a wise way to construct your roster. I mean, I think you've seen that with Mel Tucker at Michigan State. I think Ravi Seminoles are having a little bit of issue with that this year, maybe. But the way to construct a roster that we've seen, just through, these are early returns, right? Let's talk about early returns because on the eve of election day tomorrow. Early returns on this is
I'm going to mail in my response here.
Early returns here is that you have to build your roster with high school talent and supplement with the transfer portal. 77% of the 77% of the time this year alone, the better high school recruiter has won the ball game. That's a pretty definitive statement right there in itself. So, in order to have a stable, healthy program, you've got to base it. It's got to be rooted in your high school recruiting.
Let me ask you something. Hey, Mac, I want to start with a guy. Anybody that's heard me for years, I think he's a pretty good. I've said he's a good coach, and I worried about them this year. I thought, oh my gosh, 4.5 is the win total. They may be in trouble. He continues to exceed expectations. What's the secret? What's the sauce that PJ Fleck uses in Minnesota?
He's consistent. I mean, he's gone through how many offensive coordinators there?
Apparently doesn't matter though. They still move the football how he wants to move the football.
That's exactly right. They have an identity. They have a clear identity. They know exactly who they are and what they need to do to win ball games in Minnesota with the talent base that they're able to get, and he sticks to that. It doesn't matter. Moving parts don't matter to PJ Fleck. The Gophers are going to do the same thing year in, year out. It doesn't matter who's calling plays, who's the hires that he makes. They're going to be highly efficient guys doing his system, doing the things that he wants to do. That's why PJ Fleck continues to win in Minnesota. With it seems like a musical chairs of coordinators on both sides of the ball.
Adam, so you brought up an interesting point there with fit and identity with PJ Fleck, because I know what you guys do and you're crunching the numbers. You've been kind enough to share some of those with me. How do you account for fit and identity when looking at that? I mean, we've had a conversation about what if this guy goes here and we like the numbers on this guy, but how do you account for fit in those situations?
I mean, there's always a human element in any of these hires, right?
Yeah.
You have to get along with guys that you're working with, and as a head coach or even an athletic director, when they go through and they make some of these coaching hires, you're trusting somebody else with the future of your own job, right? So that's not something that these guys can or usually take lightly. So that's why we see so many times, head coaches go out and hire guys that they've been with before, that they trust, that they kind of know in and out, and know are going to work hard and do a good job. The problem with that is very rarely does a coordinator change his spots. Usually after about 5 years, we have him pegged in our system about how efficient his offense is going to be, regardless of the pieces he is given or taken away. We kind of know who he is after 5 years. So that culture element, it really is important, but you still have to hire guys who have proven that they can get it done at a high level, and not only a high level, but consistent level. We want that floor to be high. We want that that ceiling to be high on his career as well. We don't want somebody who can give you 4 clunkers and then maybe have an average year. That's not something you look for when we're helping our clients hire coordinators.
Adam, I kind of want to switch gears here on you a little bit, because I've been curious about this for like a season now. Florida and Billy Napier, it seems like the narrative has been written on that guy. It's just done. We're done with him. They've been done with him. I'm sort of watching a lot of Florida football this year because I've been curious. They don't look nearly as bad to me as the narrative about Billy Napier tends to be. Are my eyes deceiving me? What do your numbers tell you about Billy Napier?
No, and in fact, we, if not going to let any state secrets out here or anything, but if we were to be asked our opinion on Billy Napier, we would give him another year. The schedule that they've had at Florida has been brutal, and despite that schedule, we've actually seen the efficiency on both sides of the ball increase as the years went on. So he's making some strides there. And we, in any case, this is what, year 3 with Billy Napier there? Am I correct there?
Yep.
Okay, year 3. Typically, what we tell our clients to do is you have to give the coach you've hired, give him 3 years at the minimum. We've seen, people expect every hire to be Curt Cignetti. That's not the reality. Usually, it takes about 3 years for a system and a culture. I know we all love that C word, culture, but for the way the coach wants to set his program to take hold. It's usually about 3 years, and then after 3 years, that's when you evaluate where the winds are kind of taking the program. If something has not happened, if the worm hasn't turned after 4 years, then that's kind of when you're justified in maybe making a move at this point in time. But with Billy Napier, we see his arrow starting to point up a little bit. There's not a whole lot of programs out there that would look great with a schedule that they've played with the youth they've had at quarterback and the inconsistencies they've had there. So give him another year. If things don't improve next year, then maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah, so the models are interesting because I like numbers. I kind of use them as a frame of reference, but I'm the big human element guy too. So that's why I think we started to hit it off right away, because you'll give me some concrete data and then I'll tell you about how I feel, right? And then we'll be like, let's see where those meet in the middle. I was probably a year ahead on Coach McGuire at Texas Tech. They were supposed to be my surprise team last year. This year they're obviously, they're 6-2, they're 4-2 in the Big 12, coming off the upset win against Iowa State. How much of that, being a year early or whatever the models show you about their projection, does actually have to do with what you just talked about with Coach Napier and scheduling?
Well, some of it has to do with the environment they're taking over, right? Like, how drastic of a roster change are you talking about? I mean, from a Texas Tech standpoint, the roster change wasn't that drastic. The systems weren't that, the type of athlete they needed to run, the system wasn't that drastic. For example, Jeff Collins, when he came into Georgia Tech, taking over for Paul Johnson.
That's pretty drastic.
That was a drastic change.
We've seen that one before.
That guy,
yeah.
Yes, that guy needed about a 7-year runway because it changing that drastically, those systems that drastically, you're having to basically recruit your depth and recruit your starters all at once. And that might be a little easier in today's age with the transfer portal. We'll see. Even then, you have to kind of dance the devil there of how heavy do I go into the portal to get this thing going. I don't I don't envy those coaches that have to make those decisions. Those are tough things to think about and to plan out. But it really just depends on what kind of environment a head coach is taking over, as far as how quickly he turns that program around.
We're talking with Adam McClintock, college football professor from Matrix Analytical. Adam, so I got to give you a little credit here. You mentioned Cignetti earlier. Last year we asked you, hey, who's the coach that your numbers like the most, that you're most impressed with? You went immediately to Curt Cignetti at JMU. Who is that guy for you this year? Not saying to predict he's going to have a Cignetti start next year, but who's the guy that you're most enamored with the job he's doing this year?
Well, I mean, it's been the same guy the past few years. It was a guy that we mentioned up there with Cignetti, and that's Jamie Chadwell. I don't know why that guy still has not had a Power 4 offer.
It's got to be something. He's like the Eric Bieniemy of college when Bieniemy was in the NFL. We say this every year.
You're exactly right. Exactly. There has to be something behind the curtain that we're not seeing, because, that guy, he did it at Coastal Carolina when Coastal Carolina was really, they weren't anything special. He took over there and he flipped that program pretty quick, and now they've kind of went back to being, kind of a backstory. Liberty, I know they got upset by Kennesaw State a few weeks ago, but Liberty is rolling along, well, and he did it immediately there. I think Jamie Chadwell, somebody gives him a chance, I think that's the next Curt Cignetti.
Is there anybody maybe that we haven't talked about that is kind of in that same neighborhood for you?
Let me think here off the top of my head.
I'm looking for some dark horses, Adam. Come on, give me a little something here.
Dark horses. Some dark horses. All right, buddy. Not anybody off the top of my head that I can think of right now. I don't have my computer and spreadsheet in front of me, and without that, I kind of feel like Superman with Krypton. But no, off the top of my head, I don't have anybody that I can think of. No, but Chadwell is like I said, he's the guy year in year out that we're just kind of scratching our head about. Why is this guy still where he's at?
Okay, I'll ask you about one of my other pet projects then, and that is my guy Jeff Monken. Is he as good as I think he is?
He's done wonders at Army. Now the question there is,
how does that translate, right?
Yeah, how does that translate to a Power 4 program? And because you're not going to be able to bring that offense. Obviously, I mean, I think Georgia Tech learned a hard lesson there that unless you're going to stick with that offense for the extreme long term, that's hard to saddle a program with that type of offense and the type of athlete you need for that. I think Niumatalolo is doing him some favors at San Jose State because Niumatalolo has done a pretty good job at San Jose State thus far. But he's interesting. He's one to watch, but he's one that comes with some inherent red flags there just because of the system he runs and how he would definitely have to have a very detailed plan of how he plans to come in and run what he wants to run at a Power 4 program before he is going to get much look.
I feel like we go back and forth on these guys a lot nationally, and I think you may like the latter, have always liked the latter. But how do you compare Beamer and Brom? Both guys obviously coming off big upsets, but they get taught. It seems like we're kind of wishy-washy on which flavor we're consuming with both those coaches.
See, we like Brom a lot.
Yeah,
we like Jeff Brom a lot.
Yeah.
He is won everywhere. Western Carolina, or Western Kentucky. I'm sorry, he won there. He came to Purdue, and Purdue was the KU of the Big Ten for a long time. They get to 3 wins, and everybody's shocked.
Does it seem like he was there more than 5 years? Because he was like 17 to 22, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it turned pretty quick, and Purdue became a pretty stingy opponent there. In fact, he took them to the Big Ten championship game, didn't he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. So that's the type of turnaround we're looking for in coaches. And he goes to Louisville, and he's made them into a player in the ACC as well. So he's a guy we like quite a bit. Shane Beamer, he's definitely coming up in that conversation though as well with what he's done at South Carolina. He's kind of in that mode right now where he's getting consistent results, and they're a team that has to be talked about. This year alone at South Carolina, he should have one loss there right now. If you watch South Carolina how their games have went. That conceivably could be a one-loss team. So enough can't be said about Shane Beamer and what he's doing at South Carolina. He's definitely one of those coaches that we have our eyes on. But at this point, we would have Brom probably still ahead of Shane Beamer.
Adam, I want to ask you some Nebraska questions here in a second, but before we get to that, you kind of got my noodle going here a little bit with. A couple weeks ago, Coach Rule talked about guys that sort of build programs versus guys that go to winning programs and are able to keep winning. When you guys are looking at your analytics and your models, do you differentiate between guys that are able to take a program that hasn't been winning and elevate them to a certain level versus, and not to hate on Ryan,
that's your wins percentage or your expected wins percentage increase stat, right, Adam?
Yeah, exactly. That's something we track for every coach. It's our progression rate our program progression rate from year over year. And yeah, that's definitely something we track closely because that's extremely important in a head coach. That's one of the highlights that when we do profile candidates to our clients. It's one of the top things we want to highlight. I think I've shared with you guys, Coach Rule is extremely high on that progression list. I think he's our number one head coach right now in progression rate of 11%, which is year-over-year improvement, which is very impressive. At that rate, he should have his team in contention for a double-digit win season after 3 years. Now don't take that to the bank, everybody listening out there. I mean, that's just what the spreadsheet says. Other guys that are kind of in that same neighborhood, I can give you some examples.
Yeah.
Matt Campbell, who he took over a 3-9 Iowa State team, and he went 3-9 his first year, and then went to 8-5. Thinking, year 2 was a pop for Matt Campbell, and he's kind of stayed and plateaued at that mark since then. But that was a quick turnaround, a quick progression. That's what we like to see. Lance Leipold at KU did the same thing. Took over a winless team, went 2-10, 6-7, 9-4. Now he's kind of having a struggle this year, but he lost, a good portion of his offensive staff on that. And I think he's kind of trying to figure out things on that end. But he's a good coach; he'll get that figured out. PJ Fleck, not quite the same situation. He took over a 9-win team, but he went 5-7, 7-6, and 11-2. So it was year 3 for him before it popped. One that we have, I think there's been some buzz around nationwide to take who might be up for some bigger jobs. Eli Drinkowitz took over a 6-win team. He went 5-5, 6-7, 6-7, and 11-2. So he was one of those that we would have said, okay, after year 3, take a peek at kind of how the wins of the program seem, and then give him a 4th year. In his 4th year, he popped. Now he's having not quite the year they wanted there at Missouri still, but I think for Missouri in the SEC, you still have to be happy with what he's done in Missouri. Those are the kind of the guys that come to mind off the top of my head as far as guys that same tier as rule and progression rate. If that makes sense.
Talking with the analytical genius known as Adam McClintock from Matrix Analytical. You can give him a follow on Twitter. Hey, Mac, when I'm talking about coordinators, or we're talking about coordinators, there's all these names that come up, and people will bring up the fact that Nebraska flirted with Dana Holgorsen and some guys like that. If you're looking for potentially, if you wanted to get a head start, if Nebraska does in fact make a move as an OC, who are some candidates that you think fit what you think? Now, I'm asking you to bring in the fan aspect and the numbers, so careful here, Adam. Go ahead.
Well, first, I want to make this public statement here, public service announcement. The job's not open. That's not
correct.
That's not
correct.
Let's not go after.
And people know me. I'm only asking the question so we can limit the scope. Okay. Clearly the job's not open.
Yeah, on that topic, you don't fire a guy mid-season if you're in bowl contention.
Which I've said
that.
For,
yes, exactly. Which you have reiterated, but I just want to reiterate you're reiterating.
Yeah. Like 3 weeks in a row. Like we got goals ahead of us. But anyway, having said that.
Yeah. So I think a couple of the guys you need to look at. Number one, there's a human element here, so I'm not really for sure how this would mesh on the human side. I'm going to stress that Excel doesn't capture the human element of things. It just captures numbers and who would fit stylistically and efficiency-wise. You have Paul Chryst sitting on the staff at Texas. He's an offensive analyst at Texas. Texas's offense has taken off since I don't want to say that he's solely responsible for their success. Okay, that's not what I'm saying, because head coach there is a really good play caller in his own right. But Sarkisian, that is. But since Paul Chryst since they hired Paul Chryst as their senior offensive analyst, they've been a different football team. Go hire that guy. He knows offense. I know people got kind of sideways with him at Wisconsin. He's a good offensive coordinator. He's efficient. He's consistent. He's not going. He's more likely to give you a good offense than a counter. Okay. Another guy that I think that would fit good at Nebraska, and just the history of him with the staff, is Jeff Nixon out at Syracuse. Now Syracuse is going to really love us if we go out and take their offensive coordinator after taking Tony White.
Well, hey, at least we didn't take Kyle McCord. Remember those discussions? Golly, lost our mind. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. So yeah, Jeff Nixon is one. He doesn't have as much experience as Paul Chris, but his short time he has been a play caller. He's got 2 years, and this will be his third one. He has been consistently above average in efficiency from our scale. He's actually called plays for Rule before. It's a guy that Rule could be familiar with and still have that trustworthiness with him. Another guy that we really like is, and this is another one that stylistically I'm not really sure how it would mesh, but the efficiency is so high. As Brennan Marion out at UNLV, he's done tremendous things with that offense out at UNLV, and he's done it with multiple quarterbacks. He's done it with multiple quarterbacks quitting. So it's not the quarterback that's driving his system. He is the one that's creating that offense. It's not just players in the system he's just got a couple ringers out there. He is creating that offense, and it's very different stylistically, but it's effective, and that's what we look for is efficient offenses. When considering what conference and how football needs to look in the Big Ten, we kind of steer away from some stylistic I know people were kind of yelling for Dana Holgorsen in the offseason. I don't know how well that would have fit in with the Big Ten overall. Historically, in the Big Ten, to be successful, you have to show some ability to run the ball consistently. And some of those air raid offenses, that's why Graham Herald may have failed at Purdue. That's why, Phil Longo is maybe not as successful as people expect him to be at Wisconsin thus far. There's a certain element that you have to be able to run the ball in the Big Ten to be successful. So given that knowledge, given that history, and that data that we have from successful offenses for the past decade, those are the guys that we look at and say, okay, these guys might be successful in Nebraska.
That's our guy, Adam McClintock, college football professor from Matrix Analytical. Adam, we appreciate it. As always, we'll catch up soon. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR, and Lincoln. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Make sure you place your bets in person at the sportsbook in either Lincoln or Omaha. Bets must be placed in person, but you can get the app. You can build those bets before you get there and be ready to go right when you walk through the doors. It is the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Go to warhorsecasino.com for a full list of details and house rules. DB.
What up?
We had a little bit of an interesting weekend.
It was wild.
There was
something about interesting.
Well, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot of upsets.
We had some.
That's interesting? That's wild.
I think upsets are interesting.
Interesting is like trying to figure out how spiders spin webs.
Trying to figure out if crickets are smarter than we are?
Yeah. Idiot. Not freaking South Carolina and Louisville and...
So South Carolina, that one had a stinky line coming in.
Yeah, 100%.
That was only a 2.5-point favorite.
Wasn't worse than Minnesota's.
No, it sure wasn't.
Shoot, for as right as I was about Minnesota, I was dead wrong about Michigan State.
I mean, you looked pretty smart for a quarter.
Oh, I know.
You looked real smart for a quarter.
Yeah.
And then
life happened.
Signetti happened.
Yeah.
The Kurt of it all happened. And we didn't even nobody talked about Houston.
Oh, yeah, K-State. Yeah.
Like that's a
wait, and Houston has doesn't Houston have a losing record?
Yeah, they are now 4-5 after the win. Like that's been a pretty rough Houston team this year.
Yeah,
and a pretty good K-State team. They were 7-1 going into that one. That's a wild one. So you had 3 pretty major upsets.
Do you know one thing that I'm glad in this whole thing that I never gave credence to?
We didn't even talk about Louisville, but yeah, go ahead.
At no point was as bad-mouthy and as hard as on Dion as you were, and you said it was because I was a fan as a kid.
Yeah.
Do you know what it really is?
What?
I don't care what a coach's style is necessarily, as long as his players buy into it. So I'm always very reluctant.
Here's where I struggle with Dion on that, though, is there's enough guys that have left the program
That just means it wasn't for them.
Maybe.
It doesn't. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Because that just means it wasn't for them.
Here's the one thing that I would say about that versus like Matt Rule, for instance, right? There's guys that leave this program, not a lot, but there's guys that leave this program that I would be stunned if any of them had anything close to say about Matt Rule that people have had to say about Deion. Like, it's okay.
But that's just different, though.
No, but it's okay if a situation's not for you and like, hey, you're just not gonna be able to cut it here. And that's different. You can still treat them like humans. That's where I get lost with Deion. Is it just doesn't like we talked about the transactional nature that Matt Rule tries to get away from. It feels very transactional with Deion for me.
Well, sometimes I wish he would be more transactional.
You're not wrong. Like, I think you're right. There are situations here where it's like, hey, probably, and I brought this up. I think it was to Adam, actually. I think I was DMing Adam during the game. And I go, is there a certain point where you just sit there and you go, hey, these old guys might be older guys on the team, might be really good dudes, and they might even be good players. At some point, do you just have too much of the DNA of what's been going wrong before that you got to just move on?
Yeah.
Like, is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Because I think I look at some of these guys, and
do I need to go back to the we haven't won with you bit?
That's what I'm getting to, right? Because I'm sitting here and I'm looking at guys, and I'm going to say names because this is who I'm looking at.
You don't have to couch it.
Yeah. Like, I look at Isaac Gifford. I look at a guy that I think is really talented, that could be really good, that I don't think's playing the way he needs to for Nebraska to be who they think they can be. I'll even look at a guy, and Ty's been a little up and down. I think Ty Robinson has had times where he's played really, really well. I think there's been times where he has not met the moment. I think Nash is the same way. I think Deshaun Singleton's the same way. I think there's a lot of guys on that defense that maybe have just experienced the wrong thing for too long, and they're just not going to be able to get there in the time frame that they've got left with Nebraska. So what does that leave you to do if you're Coach Rule? Because I think he sees these guys and he says, hey, I can't ask for Gift to do anything more. He's doing all the things I ask him to. The only thing I can ask him to do more is to play better on Saturdays. Well, at some point, that's the thing, right? At some point, the playing better on Saturdays doesn't matter if you've done everything right. Doesn't matter if you're a shining example of everything Sunday through Friday. At some point, the playing better on Saturdays is the thing. And that's where you're right. When you say maybe Coach Rule needs to be a little bit more transactional. That's why I use the term PTSD from Carolina of not wanting to be transactional. He's brought this up, that it was too transactional of a league for him. And I get that. And I appreciate that about them. I truly love that about him. I do. Because I want him to treat people like people. But at some point, like, there needs to be like a chief borders of the situation and be like, hey, we love you to death. It's not going to work here for you football-wise. We love you. You're a great person. Maybe there's a better opportunity for you somewhere else.
Yeah, you're going to see that. I mean, I think it happens. It needs to happen as much on offense as it does defense. But
100%, yeah. There's just older guys on defense. That's why I went
Vincent Carroll or Vincent Jackson didn't play this week.
Mm-hmm.
Prince Wells seems to
be on a milk carton.
Disappeared. You did get back to playing Cam a little.
Mm-hmm. It was even a captain this week.
Which, the thing about...
Which I thought was odd.
Yeah.
I thought it was weird.
I don't have a backstory to like...
I just observation, like real time, I thought it was weird.
Yeah, I think you definitely have to have some receivers step up.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's Nair, but does Nair carry himself on a daily basis like somebody you'd want to rally with? That part I don't know. I don't know. Like, Banks at some point, you got to make some plays on some 50-50 balls, mm-hmm. right? As a quarterback, like sometimes you just have to make throws.
Yeah.
And it's independent of your OC. Like it's just frustrating for me that we seem to. Listen, I'm as good of friends with Dom as anybody, but sometimes you have to be able to say, Dom, you know what? He's got to play better, mm-hmm. and it's independent of
anything else.
Coach said. I asked Sam the question. I'm like, why do we keep pinning this whole? We pit Sad against Dylan's progression. Like, you call plays not expecting the worst. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just have to execute, right?
And if you get guys open,
You got to throw them the ball.
They got to be thrown, right?
So I think it's we've picked sides on this deal, which is unfortunate because when I prefaced the thing to Sam, for as good a players as I once upon a time played with, it was never about an individual player.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody, like people were just as mad at T. Fraze for Iowa State as they were, whatever.
Internally, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
because as fans, we always make it about a player or a couple players. Or
I can't believe they didn't. T. Fraze look, man, I got to own that. Like I'm part of this deal. I know he said. I just sat with it. Like I just saw this dude.
Yeah, you're not speculating.
I'm not speculating.
Yeah,
man. I just
you've talked to him
Saturday over halftime, right? Like, and I think you could appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like I said, for as good as Wiegert was, it's not like, well, what did Zach say?
Mm-hmm.
No, man, it was what did Coach Tenenper say?
Yeah.
Right?
Is it possible Nebraska doesn't have strong enough personalities in the coaching room right now to have it be that way?
I think if you have a lot of loyal guys, you better have a guy that can say, "Wait a minute, from my vantage point, I see this."
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to rock the boat.
Yeah.
If that's what it is, right? It's, I mean,
how fine of a line is it between having a guy that's willing to rock the boat and having a guy that's like not a part of what you're doing, like not about what you're doing? Because that, to me, that seems like it would be a tricky balance.
I don't know. I mean, I look at it like I couldn't work if I had to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do that.
What do you mean?
Like I would need somebody different from me.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
To get me at my best. So maybe some of the self-awareness is like that, right?
Yeah.
I need a certain blend or balance to get the best out of me. I don't think that should be foreign to guys that hire people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's fair.
Well, if this person has this kind of personality profile, I probably for the greater good or to get the best out of them, I probably need to surround them with this.
Is it, man? I'm trying to think of somebody like this. Is it weird that and I don't know, this was a weird fit at the time. The guy I thought of was like Whipple, who just like was okay, not like rocking the boat, but not necessarily okay being a part of everything else.
Well, so I think that's the human element that Adam was talking about, where with meshing of personalities.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do need guys. Could you say to Whipple, "Hey, Whip, man, we need to run the ball," and Whip lobby the middle finger? I mean, he might.
Yeah.
But that's counterproductive to the end game, even though he's a polar opposite.
Yeah.
He's just defiant. So
right.
you got to.
So there's a difference.
So
between
there's a difference.
Okay, I think that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between rocking the boat and being defiant?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the tricky line to walk.
Which is why you typically always start with loyalty, and sometimes that can get you in trouble.
Jack, hold on the line here. We'll get you. That was Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. We'll finish up Hurrdat Sports Radio. Coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln, and we're brought to you by our friends at MH Hospitality. Make sure you check out mhhospitality.net to check out all of their different properties. It's that time of year. You're going to have family coming in town to stay. Make sure you send them to MH Hospitality. They have you covered because when you stay once, you will carry memories forever. It's mhhospitality.net. Before we get to Jack here on the line, just in case you're listening to us for breaking news, Dennis Allen has been fired by the New Orleans Saints. I'm sure that will make our friend Michael Severe very happy. That came coming down just a few minutes ago from Adam Schefter. Apparently losing to the Panthers, unacceptable. Just we're done here.
Yeah.
After that
when
point.
you beat them by 40 the first time.
Yeah, we're just.
And the same guy gets off the bench that they benched as quarterback to come back and beat you this time around.
Yeah.
Probably not good.
Probably not going to go your way after that.
Joe asked a fantastic question. He may be right.
Where's that?
So Joe just got me to press pause.
Okay. We paused.
Yep. Joe says, do you think that most fans see it equally, Dylan and Satterfield, but one, you feel like there's an upside, and the other, Satterfield, you just feel like you don't have hopes for getting any better?
That is a good question.
He's right.
Yeah, I think it's accurate.
The easy answer to that question is
yes. 100%.
Yep. It's a good point, Joe.
Yeah, good call, Joe. Appreciate that.
Right?
Yeah.
So then we could stop pitting one against the other.
Yeah.
I just wish somebody would say, well, guys, there's still hope for
Dylan.
Yeah, because
he's young.
Because Sat's not the one not throwing to open guys or not running with the ball or whatever we feel like.
Or
just
he's
feel
not
like
the one not blocking on the perimeter. He's not the one, whatever.
Yeah, and yeah, like that's fine. Joe,
And that's fair. I can see that.
I'm with you on that.
100%. Let's get to Jack here on the Hurrdat hotline. Jack, what's going on, man?
Hey, guys. Hey, DB, I got a question for you.
What's up, Golden Voice?
When is the last time you sat down at the 2-5 no limit table?
Probably. It's 2020. I would say it's been probably 16, 17 months, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You and I played the same table before.
Yeah. Was I any good?
Yeah. You know what? I just don't remember. I just know you're really well dressed. You were the most well dressed guy at the table. That's the only thing I really remember.
You talking about the same DB?
Yeah, Jack, you're my man. Talk to me, buddy. What's up? Hey.
All right. Well, fellas, I tell you what, I've been
That's funny.
I haven't been anti-Satterfield because I've been so pro-rule as far as, letting him make the decisions that need to be made. But I got to tell you, after watching that deal Saturday, I don't know. I'm starting to get on pretty shaky ground.
Yeah.
If I had to gauge my confidence in this offense on a scale of 1 to 10, I couldn't give them any more than a 5.
Yeah.
And that the only reason I'm going to go that high is because I still want to have faith in Rule.
Yeah.
But I think that the way as much time as we wasted on the clock in that game, waiting until 2 seconds before we snapped the ball, even the BTN guys were saying Nebraska's playing like they're 20 points ahead instead of 20 points behind.
Yeah, I wonder with that, Jack, before you finish, because I'm curious to hear what you think about the former player comments, but I wonder if that's because it wasn't as smooth a play calling process as they're used to. Like it did seem to be disjointed, right? So maybe something else was going on behind the scenes.
I don't know, and I don't know what's happened with the regression of Raul. I don't know what's happened with him, but I mean, he is nowhere close to the same player and I know UTEP's not these teams that we're playing now in the Big Ten, but they're still, he was sharp then, he was quick then, his decision making was good then during those games, those first 4 games, so to speak. But boy, after that, it's just gone. Every week's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm almost wondering if they're doing that kid a disservice by continually running him out there and letting him maybe have an opportunity to just sit and watch for a little bit and see what happens.
Yeah, what were your comments on my former players?
Well, somebody put a tweet on there that he was highly upset because fans got up and started leaving after the pick six.
Colin Miller.
And my comment to that was, people pay their hard-earned money to go to that place, and you got to sit on a 2x12 with your knees up under your chin for 5 hours to have to watch that. You can't blame people for getting pissed off and wanting to leave. I mean, it was pretty bad.
A 2x12.
All right, fellas, you have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you later.
Oh,
appreciate it, Jack. No, I mean,
you sit on a 2x5 with your. Oh, that hurts my back just thinking about it.
No, I mean, it's not the most comfortable place in the world, and it's not like the weather was great. Like, I get it. Like, you pay for the ticket, you can leave if you want.
Man, I haven't played cards in forever. I miss it.
We played at your birthday, didn't we?
Yeah, it was in home and it was friendly. Like, that's nothing. Not even really any money to be won.
Don't tell that to your guy Tony V.
He's still pissed. Man, F you, DB. Dang, Tone. I don't know what Colin was on. You got to be careful because when you start talking about how people spend their money,
yeah,
they're
going to start asking a lot of questions about it. I mean, we heard Severe talk about return on investment, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't question how these people are spending their money.
Yeah. So like,
I would leave that string alone. Don't pull on that one.
He just young in the game, man.
Because
you have to be careful there.
You know who spent way more money than they've gotten back? Nebraska fans for a while now.
Yeah.
So be grateful, and that the checks keep clearing.
But I will say this, people want us to understand how fans think.
Mhm.
You kind of have to understand how foreign players think too.
Sure. No,
right?
totally.
Like there's
100%.
can't be a one-sided deal. If
Yeah.
we're going to ask for understanding, like I think
I totally get it.
perspective matters.
I can understand why he would say it.
Yeah.
I just, again, if I'm going to ask for fans to take the next logical step, I'm going to ask for players to do the same thing, right? If they're calling for sat and I'm like, okay, then what? Then I'm going to ask players the same thing too. Like, okay, sit in your seat, and then what? You want them to boo?
Yeah.
Because we heard some boos on Saturday too. Was that better?
Yeah. And that was kind of early.
It was. It was after the second drive.
Yeah.
After the second offensive drive, there was boos. Like, is that better than them leaving? You want boos instead?
Hey.
Or are you going to tell them how to legislate how they feel when they're at the game too?
I know the student section bounced.
Oh yeah, they were gone.
But I'm like, I wonder if where's the parties?
There's probably some Halloween parties because it was like a couple days after Halloween. There's probably
they're not still doing those, were they?
Oh yeah.
Really? The November 1st party?
Oh yeah. Or you do like a Day of the Dead party or whatever. A lot of people do that kind of stuff. It's college. You don't have to have like a lot of excuses to party.
I went to one of those Saturday. I was very concerned.
Yeah.
Like, Josie, where are you going? She's
like decked out, ready to go.
Yes. I thought I was watching. Is it Coco?
Yeah.
it Coco?
The animated one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Coco.
I thought I was watching Coco.
Yeah. You weren't. It's okay.
I mean, everybody's got their own opinions. Like, there's some guys that play like I can't stand listening to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that they're not like that. I don't respect that I don't understand the fact that they have the right to have their opinion.
100%. Yeah. No, I get it. I 100% get that. I think you got to be real careful when criticizing a fan base that has given a lot and gotten very little in return. Now, I'll criticize how people act sometimes, but I'm going to be very rare to criticize about how they spend their money because I understand haven't been a great investment lately, you know, and you think it can be, and I do too, but they got a brand new facility that just got paid for. You know, you got 402 consecutive sellouts. Like I'm going to have a hard time telling them they're not spending their money properly.
You just go back to what we talked about a couple of years. Like, it's just a good quality conference, coaching conference.
Yeah, it is.
And you stop me if I'm telling a lie. I said the assistants are really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a weakness,
it will be exposed.
They will find it.
They will find it.
It is a strong coaching conference.
100%. You start with the head coaches. That's easy to see. You filter on down to coordinators, position coaches. And I think that's where, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't think Nebraska should evaluate some things in the offseason, but in the offseason.
Yeah.
That's my big holdup.
I think this week coming up, and we haven't even got to that, like what I would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't like your options as a coach or a coach to player,
mm-hmm.
you want to use this week to get options.
Yeah. Give yourself some options.
Give yourself some options.
Can I throw out a quick
across the board?
I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory real quick. I'm just going to drop this in the last minute and a half and then leave. We can come back tomorrow. And we'll talk about tomorrow what you would do during the bye week.
WWDB. Just DD. Just DD.
What would Damon do? Before that, though, so the wheels have been turning a little bit since we talked to Sam. He left a lot of nuggets out there.
Sam lost his mind.
Talking about how disjointed the offense looked. Jack brought it up as well, how disjointed and how the play clock was taking a long time. And then remembered a DM that I got from a guy we just talked to, Adam McClintock, during the game. He goes, hey, does Nebraska have a no-huddle offense? And I was like, theoretically, yeah, I've seen it before. But they're huddling on every single play. And I think about –
I said to Sharpie, I go, change of pace may not hurt because then you can't overthink plays.
Yeah. But then, I hear people talking about, rules holding the play sheet. And plays are taking a long time to get in. And they're huddling on every play. And I don't know anything. Again, I'm not lying to you. I don't know anything. But if I'm going to do deductive reasoning on all the evidence I have here, was the play calling process different than it was in previous games?
Oh, you're going back to like what Jack said. And
yeah, like does that mean
taking a long time
was someone else calling plays? Was someone else involved in input on plays? I think when you line up all the things that we saw, I don't have any inside info. You can make an argument that maybe Satterfield wasn't even calling that game.
Yeah. I don't. If I knew, I honestly would tell you.
I know, but like, can you see that?
I probably would tell you off air, but I didn't think about it like real time.
I didn't either. I just thought about it because all the little nuggets that people keep dropping today. Yeah. See, I listen sometimes. I don't know if I come to the right conclusions, but I was listening. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll find out what DB would do on the bye week.